Hello, you are listening to the Gamer Librarian Podcast, the best podcast you can find on this side of the multiverse. I am your host, Adrian, and afterwards, be sure to subscribe to be notified when future episodes are released. Show your support by liking and leaving a comment. Thank you for joining. Now, I was going to release this over the weekend, but I just couldn't help but get ready to start talking about Netflix's adaptation of Three Body Problem by Liu Cixin. Now, that adaptation that they put out, which I binged through last night and today while I was working, was phenomenal. A phenomenal adaptation for a science fiction series. Now, the show covers the first book itself, Three Body Problem proper, but it's a trilogy with some extra books put in. But for the most part, by Lucian himself, he put out three main stories, and the series follows the first book. It ends right about the same time that the first book ends, and they do a really good job of adapting this into a more modern kind of audience. The book itself takes place in mostly China, so a lot of the characters are from Chinese descent and more of that nationality. But the show adapts that into a more worldwide problem. A lot of the characters are a little more broader, mostly from like Europe, America, those kind of places. But you do get the nice variety, which I think was a very good choice, especially for the visual, more kind of world impact that the series is trying to go for, and they do a lot that's pretty faithful to the book itself. So if you haven't seen the book or read the book at all, go and watch the show because the show is a really fun mystery at first, like a sci-fi mystery, but by the end of it, you're probably going to be hooked as I am for whatever they're going to do for the adaptation of the second book, A Dark Forest. And I'm excited for that because the rest of the story just gets really nutty after that. There is another adaptation for the series. It's on Amazon that you could watch right now. I don't know if they removed it, but it was mainly made in China, and it's a lot longer compared to Netflix's 8 episodes. The Amazon one is 30, and while that one is longer, that might not be a big positive for some people. You get a lot more time in that show with the events and the characters, and moments a little stressed out. But Netflix is pretty short, so you can have a nice contained story. You have two versions of the adaptation if you really want to go and watch it. The Amazon one is fully subtitled. It's all Chinese audio or like talking and things like that. And the Netflix one has a good mix of both. It's mostly English, but you get some good Chinese moments in there. And it's one of the greatest adaptations I've seen for a science fiction franchise or series out there. I'm completely excited for what's going to happen next. The show did just come out, so I really don't want to give too many spoilers for anybody who's excited to watch it. So do your best to not get any spoilers, because I think watching it from start to finish is going to be the most beneficial and enjoyable for new fans out there. So this is definitely a good time to get into this right now. And if you like it, go read the book. I could actually recommend that the book series is just as crazy as the rest of the show. And there are probably audiobooks out there that's going to be pretty good for some people. So yeah, Three Body Problem, 10 out of 10. I was excited to talk about this before and just get people to know that like the book series is good. Adaptation is a really good one. They don't do anything out of pocket or they don't change anything. It's really faithful and really well done. So there's that. Um, he has another book. Liu Cixin has another book called Ball Lightning, which I plan on reading and talking about coming up soon for the podcast here. And I'm excited because I like his writing. I like the characters that he talks about that he puts into the stories. And Ball Lightning seems pretty crazy. He kind of adds in some cool ideas for mysterious things in terms of science or physics and stuff. So I like that, and I'm hoping that maybe if it's a good book, it gets another good adaptation. You know, Netflix does also have a an HBO original show on it right now, I guess, because Max got like cut off of like service, so they don't do that anymore. And it's the show Warrior, and it's loosely based off of like I guess Bruce Lee, maybe his early life or some like writings that he put out, and it's basically loose on that. And it's a very enjoyable story. It's about a Chinese immigrant who comes into San Francisco during the late 1800s, and he joins one of the prolific Chinese gangs that's terrorizing the town. And he gets into a bunch of kung fu fights all throughout the show, and they're fighting all throughout Chinatown and most of San Francisco and stuff, and that's pretty entertaining. It's very well thought out show. There's a lot of characters, a lot of really great written characters in my opinion, and there's some pretty good tension between not just the Chinese but other gangs during the time, like the Irish and police and stuff. And I think it's a very authentic and real show. Besides the kung fu and stuff, which I guess is pretty realistic to some degree, but the fights are really good. The fights are actually pretty nice. They're usually done at least earlier in the season, early in the show. They have some longer like single shot takes, but later on I think they get into a little more like action kind of set pieces. But it's still enjoyable, And a third season came out not too long ago, I think last year. So I'm hoping that maybe there's gonna be more. I'm not really fully finished on it yet. I think I'm at the end of season two or somewhere around there. But yeah, that's another really great show that I think you guys should go and check out. That's on Netflix because they have it, so that's pretty cool. And besides what I've been watching, I've been reading a bunch of other stuff as well. I've been in order to honor Akira Toriyama, I've been going back towards the Dragon Ball manga. I've gotten to volume 4 now, and Goku has just finished his first Budokai Tenkaichi, losing to Jackie Chun, which is pretty crazy. But now we're getting into like the Red Ribbon Army stuff, which is awesome. Dragon Ball is such a lovely, lovely series, and it's so endearing. I'm reading the mangas physically, and they have all these little additives to it, like Akira talking about his whatever he's doing, like he likes taking cold baths or something. He talks about in the beginning of the manga, and then there's some Q&A stuff or some like art in the back of it, which is really nice. A lot of the fans from back in the 80s and 90s would write about or write to him and ask questions and stuff, and reading all that's always nice. So on top of that, it's been a nice additive while I'm reading the manga. So while I've been reading the Dragon Ball manga, I have been also reading the Journey to the West, old mythical story from 1500s China. And Akira took a lot of influence from this story and put it into Dragon Ball. Goku is in a lot of ways very similar to one of the main characters, Sun Wukong, and there's a lot of other similar characters throughout the story that you can see similarities in the Dragon Ball. And it's one of the most fantastical stories I've ever read. I mean, it's very long and it gets a little convoluted at times. I think about halfway through the story, I was pretty done with it. That's about 50 chapters. It's 100 chapters long, and halfway through, I was already pretty done with it because it kind of drags. It's a very long adventure. Not that the content or the events in it were necessarily boring, even though they were all kind of boiled down to the same. The characters go to a new place, they either get tricked or captured in some similar scenario, and then they fight some big demon off and on towards the end, and then they move on. That's the crux of most of the path in the story. What I did like most about it though was probably the beginning, because you see a lot of Sun Wukong's early life, like how he came into being, and you get a lot of introduction to the world, which is very fantastical. It takes a lot of basis of, I guess, real world events. From what I saw online, it takes some influence from real monks who made a journey towards the west, but then it adds a lot of fantastical stuff like dragons and demons and mystical weapons and all that good stuff. But the beginning was really cool. I liked the beginning, focusing on Sun Wukong and him being this weird little monkey dude who just got into crazy antics like stealing stuff and getting punished by the gods and all that stuff. The journey itself is like a path of enlightenment that Sun Wukong and his companions go. They're guiding this monk over to the west to get these scriptures, and the path of the party is to gain enlightenment while working together to do this task. And while you see that in a lot of the story itself with them working together and fixing their differences and all that kind of stuff. A lot of the characters are pretty selfish. They're pretty set in their ways, and they do things that get the party into more hot water than not, which is kind of funny because that happens a lot in Dragon Ball as well. and it was just such a fun little ride. Even if it did drag on for a lot, I think the version I had was 1,200 pages long, so that was a lot to read within a week and a half or so. But it's one of the stories that influenced what I to be believe to be my favorite franchise ever. Dragon Ball is such a lovely world to experience and go back to every now and again. And with Akira passing, I just really wanted to understand what, Dragon Ball was to him. And it seems like Dragon Ball was like a fan fiction in his eyes to some way of Journey to the West. And I like that. I like that a lot. So Journey to West, while it's not my favorite stories ever read, I'm glad I got a chance to read something so old. This thing's from the 1500s, and there's no proper author from what I've seen online. Everybody who's read it, I believe, or translated it gets credit, so that they just do that. But I don't think there's any proper author, or I think there's an author that's actually attributed credit back during the 1500s. I'm sure you could look it up on Wikipedia, but it's cool to see that stories back then can be influenced 400 years later to stories now, and stories now written now probably do the same thing 400 years later, and that's something that I find really interesting and nice. So I'm looking forward to reading more Dragon Ball. I'm gonna finish up the rest of the manga, and I don't know what else I'm gonna do. I want to read one of his other mangas, like Doctor Slump or Sandland. I want to at least try and get some of those under my belt. And in the future, I'm going to try and run a Dragon Ball tabletop RPG. There's like a fan made rule set online that seems pretty cool. And that's kind of in like bare bones right now, just me and my friends. So I'm not really sure what's gonna happen with that. I don't know if I'm gonna do anything on start playing right now. Time is a little constricted for me right now. But here's hoping. The Dragon Ball is something that's beloved to me, and I'm trying to make this year maybe a little more about Dragon Ball with Akira being gone from us all. So enough about Dragon Ball. Let's switch over to a another dragon-centered topic that I want to get into, and that's Dragon's Dogma. Dragon's Dogma 2 did just drop for today on PS5, and I think PC owners got it yesterday or so, but that's here or there. I got it on PS5, and I played it a little bit last night. I got to about 30 minutes in, and we're headed to the capital now, I believe, in the game, and I'm trying to make it towards where I can get the trickster vocation. I was looking online, and you can only get the vocations by like following the main quests and then finding like the tomes or whatever the collectibles are throughout the world. It doesn't seem that difficult, but I was hoping to play trickster from the get-go. But you got to play as one of the first vocations first, and then find the vocation, which isn't that terrible. But before I get too far into Dragon's Dogma 2, because I haven't even played much of it as of now. I'm really waiting for the weekend. I want to light up a joint and just kick back and play that game all week. And over the week, have beaten Dragon's Dogma 1, the first game, Dark Arisen, I think it's also called after its DLC expansion. And I only got to, I guess, like the first credits scene of it, like the first game's ending, where you beat the dragon, and then like the ground opens up in the middle of the capital, Grand Sorn, and you get like this whole end game, like underground dungeon stuff. That's right where I stopped, and that was a little bit of a bummer because I was hoping to have a little more time to get into that game and do the DLC proper before 2 came out. But here we are now, and while I was playing Dark Arisen on my Switch, it wasn't a terrible experience by any means. It was still fun, but I would definitely like to play Dragon's Dogma 2. One though, if you haven't played it, I recommend doing it. If you on the fence of getting Dragon's Dogma 2, or if it's too expensive or anything like that, get Dragon's Dogma 1. Get Dark Arisen because there is a lot to do in the game, and a lot of it is pretty similar to what the sequel is, even if it's an older game. It's still a similar experience. I think Dragon's Dogma 2 is probably more of like a spiritual successor reboot for the franchise and like a proper sequel. They even mention how like this is a different world from the main first game or something. But Dragon's Dogma 2 is really fun for a game for a Capcom game. I guess geared a little bit more towards like the American audience. It did pretty well, like a sleeper hit. Not a lot of those Capcom games do very well like that when they're mostly American focused. I'm not really sure how well it sold throughout the world, but for this kind of game to get a proper, really high budget sequel like it is now, they must be really trying to hit on the love for these bigger open world RPGs, and maybe whatever success they have with Dragon's Dogma 2 will transfer into something like Monster Hunter. Because while I'm not the biggest fan of Monster Hunter, I still think that like their idea for gameplay is really great. Just put the players into as many modes of combat as you can, and just give them a bunch of enemies to fight. Even if the game is a big collectathon grind fest, Monster Hunter is still pretty fun. So yeah, over the weekend I'll be playing through Dragon's Dogma 2. I'll probably talk about it a little more when the next podcast episode drops, just because I'm not very far in Dragon's Dogma 2. I want to talk about the ending and what they have planned for an end game and all that stuff. But some stuff has happened over the week that's I kind of want to talk about is Baldur's Gate, the studio behind it, Lorien, announced that they're not really doing any more DLC. They had DLC slated, like they were already working on it, but I guess they just kind of cut that idea and they're going to move on to their future projects, which is, good for them. They seem to be pretty happy about that, not having to work on like post game content for 2 years and then hope that it's good when it comes out and then try to, rush on their next game. It's good that the companies are maybe seeing the backlash or the negative effects of adding on content for games so late on, because it isn't like a fighting game where you can work on a character for a few months with your small team and you're relatively good to go. But a lot of those bigger DLCs, like when it's like campaign, stories, mission, or even like multiplayer, they're pretty large and expansive. You're practically making like another game, in some way. So kudos to them for at least, figuring out that, we don't really need DLC. I don't even think Baldur's Gate needs DLC. It's such a big, encompassing experience. It's like Skyrim. Even Skyrim didn't really need DLC. Not a lot of games do. So good for them, truly. And yeah, I don't think there's any more games coming out within the rest of the year that's really on my table or like that I foresee myself playing in the future. And I'm just probably gonna wait, play some games that have been out for a while. I would love to go back and do Chrono Trigger because of Kira's passing and everything like that. I would love to play that again, or maybe Dragon Quest. That would be really cool. And yeah, Sunday, the fourth episode of The Walking Dead's One True Live comes out. I've been talking about that for a few episodes now. I love it. I think it's a really good Walking Dead spinoff out of the ones that are specifically on AMC Plus. I think it's the best one. I don't think it's as good as maybe like Fear, but it's definitely not as good as the main show. But it's a good third or fourth for the franchise. I would highly recommend. And yeah, that's about it. I've been on Dragon Ball Kick. I finished Journey to the Rest, and now I'm going to be looking forward to whatever comes up next week. And I hope you guys have a good time with this weekend. Play Dragon's Dogma 2. Watch Netflix's Three Body Problem while you do that as well. Or, just go outside. We've been having some really nice weather here in New Jersey. We just got started spring, I suppose, so it's been really nice with some rain here and there, but over the summer, and I plan on, reading more outside, so expect more of me, like talking about books and stuff. I'll have more time for that. And yeah, you guys should stay safe out there.